Signs of the Southland, Monday, October 9th, 2023. Mr. Grant, I need you to make a quick flight aware search for me for planes leaving Fort Lauderdale. I'm looking for one labeled MARIO.
Uh, that's not a valid registration in the US. And also, I use Flight Radar 24. They don't pay to sponsor this podcast, but Flight Radar 24 is where it's at. So, get on that.
And then it looks like Mario Cristobal has probably already been fired by Miami by the time of recording, hopefully. Gentlemen, I think it's best if we dispense with the niceties this week and go straight to our main event. What do you say?
Sure.
We'll come around back the corner to talk about Jake's fun weekend in Nashville at the end, but let's start with what Mr. Purdy has dubbed the miracle in Miami, although I think there's an NFL play also dubbed that,
I learned about this
probably.
recently, and so I think people are still trying to figure out what to call the game. Like, is it the Miracle in Miami Gardens? Is that how we differentiate? There's gardens
The Hard
involved in
Rock
this one.
Miracle.
The heart. Oh God.
Name it after a really crappy series of bars.
The Land Shark Stadium Sprint.
The Sun Life
You,
thing. I don't know.
Joe
Joe
Robbie
Robbie.
Stadium. Something.
pro
The Joe
player
Robbie journey.
the pro player play. I don't know.
That sounds like the
have we
most
named all of
generic
the iterations of
stadium
this
name.
stadium now? Have we
Hold on,
done
no,
them
no, no.
all?
Now I have to find the list. There's 8. There was a
There's
Sporkle
8?
quiz on this recently.
Oh, it's
Um,
amazing.
I now need to find all of the names. So give me 1 second.
Quote,
It
there's
started.
a Sporkle list on this. Ay, ay, ay.
There was. I'm not kidding.
There has to be. There has to
Hold on. Okay. Joe Robbie Stadium,
be. Okay.
Pro Player Park, Pro
Oh,
Player Stadium,
okay.
Dolphins Stadium, Dolphin
Yeah.
Stadium,
Oh.
Land Shark Stadium, Dolphin Stadium again, Sun Life Stadium, New Miami Stadium,
Forgot
and
about
Hard
that.
Rock Stadium. That is
New
I
Miami
guess there's a
Stadium
list of
when
10.
it was when it was like 20 years old. That was just like they were like, we put a roof on it. It's a new stadium.
I mean, it really
Welcome
did
to
look
Miami
amazing.
To be
Gardens.
fair,
The renovation was
it
one
did
of the
look very
best.
new.
The renovations made it look like one of the greatest, like just coolest renovations you could do in a stadium.
It did look
I
very
had
soccer.
I was
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I was there in 2011, and can tell you that it was terrible for a weeknight Marlins game in the middle of June. Would not recommend going back for that, but that stadium and playing situation doesn't exist anymore. So,
It's one
that
of my
advice
favorite
is
stadiums to
expired.
play in MLB The Show is to go back and play that orientation of.
Can you still play it in
Yeah, they
in
got a
the
lot of the.
show?
You can play Turner Field in the show. They got a lot of the old stuff. Yeah.
If I can ever
Really?
remember how to hit in the show, maybe I'll try it out.
I
But I
do.
think we've now
Yeah.
gone
Too
far
far. Too far.
afield.
Too far.
Far afield of our topic. Jack, you were live on this one the entire time. What were your thoughts as this unfolded?
Man.
Actually, paint a picture. Paint a
Yeah.
picture of
Yeah.
what
Sure.
what
Yeah.
what the game looked like at this point.
So I want to start back in Mercedes-Benz Stadium because I was at the United match, and my dad was like, "You know what? We're leaving early. This Braves game is stressing me out because we were kind of watching that at the same time. This United game was stressing us out. We were down 1-0 to a good Columbus team, and I didn't really have a say in the matter because he was my ride home. So I go home. I watch Miami kick that field goal. I hadn't been tracking the game at all in the first half. Was just planning to just watch the second half, and then I see like, oh, it's tied at half, or then now it's 3-0. Like, okay, after last week, this is incredible. Like, this is not what any of us would have expected considering what happened against Bowling Green. Um, and then the offense comes alive and goes back and forth and stuff like that. Um, and then I run the Twitter during the games most of the time, and it just became by the end of that game, it just became a lot of like, well, we did the wrong thing. Haynes King threw the interception, the quadruple coverage. And then they score, and then they got the field goal on that. Um, and then it's like, well, we're gonna need an onside kick. Didn't work, or whatever happened, and then they didn't kneel the ball. There was 26 seconds left, and they didn't kneel the ball. Like they had we did not get, we had to punt or whatever, fourth down. I forgot what it was. It was all kind of a blur at this point because it's like 11:30 at night. Um, Miami has a kneel down situation with plenty of time, like under a minute to go. Like this is like if a goalie in soccer intentionally does an own goal with 10 seconds left in a match. Like it's the dumbest stuff ever. They call a run play, they call a counter or whatever, and then they fumble. Don't look at the replay because it looks like it's not a fumble.
I was already moving around. That you can't overturn that.
Fair. And so I remember tweeting like, "Well, we have the ball. It'll take a miracle." And sure enough, Haynes King found Christian Leary wide the heck open on the right side with like 10 seconds to go.
And that was after the first crazy completion to set up that pass.
Right, yeah.
And they clocked it, and then they got
they in terms of how you execute a 26-second desperation drive starting in your own territory, they did it. Like they absolutely did it.
Quick incomplete.
No timeouts. Like that was as perfect as that could ever go. And Leary's in the end zone with 2 seconds with it ended up being 2 seconds to go. And then they don't even do the PAT. But that is the first time I've been able to like live tweet gibberish and everyone knew what I meant.
I appreciate that one, they had that moment, but I appreciate and have internally chosen to believe that they spiked at Georgia Tech's kneeled whatever the ball.
Yeah, kneeled down the PAT.
On the PAT, simply out of spite, even though I know it's logical, you don't want to get a run back and somehow Miami winds up in field goal range and whatever. I get it. But also, that was pretty funny. So, even though, my From the Rumble seat, like staff prediction was, if we're going to win this game, I think it'll be about 24-20, and it's going to require really some turnover luck. I gotta say,
you were like 3 points off. You and who was it?
I was 1 point off. If
they would have, someone else was close. Whoever else
was
predicted with us was close. I'm trying to find what I wrote during the game here. So what happened? We punted with 5:42 left, and then we had a face mask call on that last Miami drive that extended that drive even further into the game, which kind of like gave them like the oh well, this is over kind of thing. And then they called that run play with 26 seconds left. Like and people have probably seen this on Twitter, but like Mario Cristobal, Miami's head coach, has done this before when he was the Oregon coach. Against Stanford, he called run plays in a kneel down situation. They fumbled, allowed a touchdown to Stanford, and Stanford won in double overtime. He is a repeat offender in one of the most inexplicable coaching decisions out there that you can do on a football field, which is win the game. Do nothing and win a game. When all you have to do is nothing and win, he has failed twice.
I would say, I would add to that he seems to have not really kneeled out wins this season.
Yeah,
it's a trend for him this season, and this season specifically. I think I saw a tweet about this where they like
it's in the ESPN play-by-play, and there's video documentation. I mean, obviously they're on TV, but like in any game has he done that.
The Oregon one is funny as a Stanford secondary fan because from like 2015 to or not even 2015, like 2012 when Andrew Luck was playing at Stanford to like 2019 when there were some truly awful Stanford teams.
Right. Yeah.
Oregon would have so much trouble with Stanford that's just like the icing on the cake. It's hilarious. It's truly funny. I think, Jack, you said it really well. It's like all he had to do was nothing. And he chose to do something, and he cost himself the game. And that's one like the Marcus Freeman decision a couple weeks ago or I guess it was a lack of decision to not run an 11th player on the field in that goal line stand versus Ohio State. You have to just wear that one on the chin. Like there's no
coming back from this. Like that is. I'm gonna read CFP numbers. Put this up on Twitter. The Miami's win percentage odds by seconds in the game. With 117 seconds left, they had 98% chance of winning. With 82 and 99% chance, it dropped down to 94% a few seconds later. But at 25 seconds left in the game, they had a .999 chance at winning the game. In 23 seconds of game time later, they had a .006 chance of winning the game after we had scored. It dropped a full 99% in the span of 23 seconds.
Well, let me add that as well. Let me add to that. Like that fumble at Tech Zone 26 by Donald Chaney Jr. Was a 21.
Poor Donald Chaney Jr. That's not his fault. That's not his fault.
See what you mean now.
That fumble by Miami cost them 21% win probability at that point with 33 seconds left.
So it's still good. Like they were at it goes from 99 to 70 something or whatever. Yeah,
they were like 97%. Our model isn't perfect. They're like sometimes the ESPN timestamps are wrong, but let's say like they lost approximately 21 points of win probability just off of the fumble. Tech still has like a significant way to go down the field, and they have a limited amount of time to do it. I don't remember exactly what the timeout situation was, but like this is desperation time. I think that like you said. Yeah. So Haynes King throws an incomplete pass, and then that first big pass play to Malik Rutherford for 30 yards that Jake had mentioned before. That's 12% win probability added just on that play itself. Haynes King throws another incomplete pass. And then you get Tech hauling it to Christian Leary for 44 yards for a touchdown. The plays are a little out of order here, just based on how things broke down in ESPN's play-by-play. But yeah, like that touchdown pass from Haynes King adds 83% win probability. And it was 2 seconds left. It was a pretty ridiculous sequence. There was also a delay of game on the 2-point conversion. It looks like, which doesn't matter. I mean,
he let the clock run all the way down. He let the clock run all the way down and then kneeled the ball. I mean, okay. I rehearsed this little rant here that I'm about to give. So my perspective on watching this game was I was up in Asheville for reasons. Those of you who listen to this podcast that know me in real life, you know that reason, and it's very fun, but I'm not going to take any further of a left turn. All that to say, neither the brewery we were at nor the place where we were staying had ACC network. So I was cobbling my following of this game together based on the radio, gamecast, and phone stream where available and plentiful, and also the From the Rumble Seat Slack, which is also, going off the whole time. All that said, I wanted to tune in on the radio. The radio, Georgia Tech has an app which has all these handy dandy live streams. The first thing I heard when I turned this radio on, and I confirmed that this happened with other people who I know listen to this game on radio because they like to listen to the radio, is the first thing each one of us heard, and this is multiple people at multiple different times tuning in, is a Brock Bowers. This is Brock Bowers, tight end for your Georgia Bulldogs, 2-time national champions, whatever NIL commercial came after that. You have one job. You have one job as the Georgia Tech app, is to not have ads starring UGA's players. That is your one job. I didn't even know that was a job that you had to do, but apparently we had to think about it. Rant aside. Went to pause the game during one of the commercials that happened during the end stretch, doing my thing. Don't want to just blast an ad out into wherever I was. Came back on, and it was no longer on 680. So I don't really know what was going on in radio world. If anyone out there has any power, please no more UGA player ads on the stream of the Georgia Tech radio broadcast. That would be great.
My dear friend Maggie worked for 680 this summer, so maybe she's got some help here.
I don't know if it's the app. I don't know if it's whoever manages the sports rights, but if UGA is buying NIL ads on our space, can we just politely say no? Or whoever does that, just no more of those, please. Secondarily, we got to make sure 680 stays on because I don't know where the post game was, but it was not on there. All that said, it was quite an interesting game to follow. I'm sure it was hard to follow on air, but between the, silent stream, radio, gamecast, chatter amongst writer type blogger people, I don't know. I don't think I've ever quite seen a game unfold like that. You had the blind optimism, you had the wild pessimism of the From the Rumble Seat chat, as there always is. Both of those in due form, but you also had like legitimately I feel like a lot of very weird twists and turns to this game, even independent of the
Right.
final minute,
Yeah.
which ACC Network posted on their YouTube channel the final minute of the game, because obviously clicks and people want to watch that and stuff. And it was a 13-minute long video. So like obviously a lot of twists and turns there at the end, but the whole game, like turnover luck or just turnovers in general. You had weather, you had, I don't know. There's a whole long list of things that you can have. You have almost blocking an extra point, but then there's a penalty and they get the extra point. Like I don't know. This game really kind of had it all, and I feel like I was doing some reflecting. And in the last like 8 years, off the top of my head, you had every Miami game is defined by some weird play or collection of plays, and I mean, this is like the
or
icing.
moment,
It's been like 8
or
years.
just like pregame moment.
Yep. What are we talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So kind of doing that reflecting. I didn't do all this remembering for nothing. It's a lot of effort, so bear with me. 2016, Justin Thomas's back-to-back fumble returned for 7. That was the first game my family saw Georgia Tech play, by the way. They're like, oh, man, that was interesting. I'm like, hush. Justin's great. But 2017, you had the bubble screen game just all the way down the field to end it with the Miami player pinning the ball against his helmet to set up I think it was game-winning field goal, right? Something like that.
Something like that. It was very David Tyree-esque, and it made me very angry.
2018 was the Bobby Dodd after dark, like fumbled punt and like player taunting, blackout, whiteout by each team. That was very weird. 2019 had Presley Harvin throwing the touchdown. 2020 canceled because of COVID. 21, I think we ran like a 2-point conversion all the way back to the house.
It was either 21 or 22. That was
we did a 2-point reversion. We did the reversion.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then last year was just kind of probably the least notable of them. But like they took a year off and then like bam, you got this. So
right back into it.
Sorry.
For a conference that had its postseason structure created specifically for one of these teams to make its championship game every single year. Yeah, these games get really stupid.
ACC Coastal has not left the building quite yet.
See, what happens is like they had one division with low levels of coastal chaos and one division with very high levels of coastal chaos. And they've just spread it all around instead of like eliminating all of it.
It does, yeah, it just mixes in with everybody. It doesn't go away.
It's a nice emulsified sauce of coastal chaos.
It is thickened. It's a great thickening agent when everyone gets involved.
It's a nice little roux. What I'm saying is the New Orleans Saints to the ACC next, coming to you live on ESPN. Okay, jokes aside, walk us through some of these post-game presser quotes, because some of these they're bangers, Mr. Purdy.
Oh man, yeah, no, these are both with Brent Haynes and Christian had talked with the guy at they had ACC Nation, I think, had a desk at the game.
They brought the show to Mark Richt.
None of these are attributed. I don't know who these are for, Jake.
Oh, well, I took the notes there, so I forgot to take notes on Brent Key's presser, but he had some.
Oh, here they are. Oh, I see them now. All right, you go ahead though. You did this.
Yeah. So Brent said a lot of like classic coach stuff. The one that I keep circling around and finding in various forms and fashions is like essentially the Bowling Green game is either going to define us in a positive manner or a negative manner. He said this more coachish than me, but how are you going to let that define you? A note from Moala's press conference, but when asked about his reaction to the game, I just prayed to God, thank you for letting me have fun today, or something along those lines. And I thought that was heartwarming and a really good way to put it. Like in my post game reflection,
it's also just it feels weird after last week where he was the one that admitted, yeah, we did not prepare last week at all to go from. Like, he didn't try to back that up or whatever. He's just like, man, I just had a good time. Which, granted, you're in the high of that moment. Like, I don't blame him for being like, this is the greatest thing that we've had all year, because it was.
I mean, I don't know. And I think this kind of allows a door open to kind of, we're halfway through the season. It's bye week. We can probably talk about this a little bit more next week. But while it's fresh in my head, I think a lot of fans were pretty disappointed in the Bowling Green game in Louisville and things like that. I've heard, so and so, oh, we could be 5, oh, we could be 4-2, oh, we could also be 2-4 because blah blah. I think if you would have sat all three of us down on our football preview podcast and said, hey, guys, after 6 games, you're going to be 3-3. I would say that all of us would be like, okay, great. That means we beat
that tracks.
Miami or Wake or Ole Miss on the road or Louisville in a, who knows what's going to happen game.
It would have tracked.
We won 2 of those.
Yeah, we thought Miami was a coin toss, but it's like, Louisville, we thought was a coin toss. It's like, all right, we can see winning or losing that. We had no idea. And then, you beat South Carolina State and Bowling Green. But,
I think this is the universe is normalizing there a little bit, right? Like maybe
the emulsified sauce of ACC Coastal chaos, Jake.
Miami, okay, not gonna lie, I found some great joy in listening to the Shutdown fullcast after dark as they kind of figure out in real time what's going on in this game. But somebody pointed out on their show that Miami now has a transitive loss to itself. And if that's not the coastalist chaos that I think you can have, it's got to be close. But no, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to relitigate Bowling Green. And, I think part of the thing that maybe that freed us to do is just enjoy the fact that we just saw something that we will probably all collectively never see again, possibly for any team or any sport on that level of like, why? Like unnecessarily like crazy ending that could have just been completely avoided by choice. By a choice somebody made, not like crazy happenstance.
More of the quotes. What are the other quotes you wanted to do?
More of the quotes. I believe Leary's quote was something along the lines of, I knew I had to catch that one, laughs. The one that we're talking about. Haynes King had a banger of press time. That's definitely, I mean, you should go listen to all of them. They all had some real insight. Moala also had some notes on the new DC and stuff like that. People talking about practice, but Haynes King, I think, really absolved himself well. He made a point to say, like they had areas where they were good and areas where they, this is his words, really bad. That's part of playing the game, but their goal was to sustain more. And honestly, he kept talking about the red zone finishes and honestly being something that they talk about every week, finding a way. And yeah, I think it all can be summed up with one that I made sure to type out, and it was, at the end of the game, the mindset was, this is what makes it. Let's go do it. The team had to believe in each other. It wasn't necessarily a something you could think or feel or hope. It was commitment and believing, and they had a chance, right? And I say this with my background as a swimmer is the most cliche thing that you hear in swimming all the freaking time is that if you have a lane, you have a chance. And this is about as like have a lane, have a chance as I think you get in sports.
In football,
right?
Yeah.
You get one shot to make it happen. And I don't know. There's something Jason Lezak-ish about this.
I've extended this metaphor so far in my head. I'm not going to actually say it all on the podcast here because it's too far into the swimming lane. But I want to know what Chad tweeted on.
Bad pun, by the way.
You're
swimming
welcome.
Lane. I'm not letting you get away with that one.
Take it.
They can't keep getting away with this. Sorry.
So Haynes, I'm curious what y'all think of this in terms of like just general vibes on Haynes. Right now, this is what Chad Bishop from AJC put on Twitter. He's third nationally with 16 passing touchdowns, 8th in points responsible at 108, and 19th in passing yards with 1,631. So if you want to be any kind of football team in the country that like is competent, unless your name is Iowa with defense, you have to have a quarterback. Like that's just how football works. And we have a quarterback now. But I know we've kind of rehearsed this in the past too, of just like, oh, we can actually have a guy that's reliable and like but like he's actually kind of proving it. He's backing it up. Yes, he had a couple picks. He had some not great. I mean, he had a very, very bad throw near the end of this game into quadruple coverage. That
half of his passing yards came in the last 26 seconds of the game.
Right. I mean, it was not a great day by all accords, but a win is a win. It don't matter how you get it, as long as you get it. But like it's starting to pan out. I feel like even that Bowling Green game was like he wasn't necessarily like bad, just the defense was terrible and didn't give him a chance to hold a lead. Well, after a certain amount of time, but like it's the things are building on each other with Haynes in a really good way. Which if he can keep building on this week after week, little by little, he's going to be. And at these NCAA ranks and these critical stats, like he is going to be at a very noticeable level of quarterback play come a very notable game in November.
I think
Okay,
that
let's not write checks that we can't cash. Let's be very
I
clear.
wasn't writing a check. I'm just saying he'll be he very well if he keeps improving week after week like humans do when they do a thing over and over and over again. He'll be
you said that, but you just lived through the Jeff Collins era, so I don't know about improvement being
that man was
guaranteed by
actively
doing something
sabotaging the team.
Again.
So like, come on, this is much different. This is much different. Much different situation.
I'm giving you a hard time, but my point in kind of making that illusion is like, I think you could have, I don't know, Roger Staubach combined with Joe Namath, combined with Justin Thomas, combined with Joe Hamilton.
Are you going to do the Fox Sports like Frankenstein quarterback bit live right now?
All molded into one super quarterback running every offensive scheme to perfection from the triple option to the multiple pro style, NFL development nonsense thing. Everything under the sun, you can mold them into a super quarterback. And I mean, people would still be like, well, he threw that interception. And he didn't have the most passing yards, but he was right in his presser when he said like something they focused on was finishing drives. And Akshay, you're Mr. Advanced Stats, but I mean, they finished a number of drives. I feel like they were reasonably successful. And I mean, Miami couldn't hold on to the dang ball, and Tech held on to it better, whether that was Haynes King on the ground, Haynes, Cooley, whomever in the ground game. And, obviously Leary came up really big in a key catch there, but, between Rutherford and Singleton, I don't know. I think there's a lot to like, and Tech may not have the most 5-star top line, but I feel like there's certainly a lot of names getting in the mix on offense and on defense as well, between just all the folks that we've seen.
The tackling was a night and day difference this week.
Absolutely.
I was hoping we get to that. Like a lot of our chat was mentioned. Like, wait a second, we're like actually getting like I know there was so many times in that second half when I finally got home to watch. I was like, wait, that was a really good open field tackle. Like we were shutting down out routes where the ball is caught and stuff like that. Like it was so much different than like if you saw the Bowling Green game and then just like, you know what, forget it. Just watch some of these plays from the Miami game because it was so much different how well the tackling was just to shut down plays that were not getting shut down last week. And then what was there third down EPA on this thing or what?
We don't have third down EPA. We have third down success rate, which Miami was at 44% and Tech was at 29%. I don't know if that helps or hurts you, the take you're about to make.
It helps. We were way worse last week. Bowling Green was really dark. It was 10-17 last week on third down. So, yeah, that's better. That's noticeably better in terms of not just handing extended drives back to the opponent. So, yeah, absolutely. That is progress in the right direction.
Couple of odds and ends. I want to make sure that I know from some of the things that you've mentioned. For Jake mentioned talking a little bit about finishing drives. I don't have a stat for. Well, I do have a stat for how well Tech finished drives. However, it's currently bugged because ESPN data is a wonderful journey of self-learning and self-cleaning. But I can talk a little bit about the defensive side, or we could talk about the Tech offense from using Miami's defense as a barometer. And their stop rate, which is the percent of defensive drives that ended in a tackle or in a turnover on downs or turnover or punt, was 35% for Miami's defense. So Tech had 12 drives. So really, Miami struggled to have Tech come off the field, which is it. So your point about Tech being able to finish drives consistently and them keying on that sounds like it bears out via the numbers. I think another thing that we mentioned as well, that I think, Jack, we were talking about before we started recording, is that if you take a look at some of the holistic stats of this game, is that Miami was had a really good success rate, right? But a very poor EPA per play. So their EPA per play is minus 0.16, which is 21st percentile out of games in 2022. But their success rate was 46%, which is 72nd percentile out of in the same sample size. So I think the thing that you have to remember is that when we're talking about success rate, is that is just if you think about it like vectors, like Georgia Tech people might, success rate is just direction. It's just yes or no, whether you had positive or negative EPA on a scrimmage play. So on Miami's scrimmage plays, they were positive 46% of the time, which like is good. Like really good. You always want to be in positive situations. But when you factor in magnitude of those vectors, which is the EPA on that play, that's when you start getting into trouble. So if you take a look at the big plays list on Game on Paper, the top line thing is a Tyler Van Dyke pick that cost Miami 8 expected points, right? Then there's Haynes King pick, which cost Tech 7. Then there's the game-winning touchdown by Tech, but then immediately after that, it's 2 Tyler Van Dyke picks that were 5
Van Dyke collective
negative 5 EPA, and then minus 4 EPA.
3 Van Dyke picks cost them 17 EPA.
17.2 EPA. I mean, yeah. So just like you have to sort of take that into account when you're looking at some of the differences in some of these stats. There's one more thing that came to mind that I wanted to mention. I think actually that was turnover luck. That's one of the things that I think you started off with Jake. Turnover luck was in Tech's favor in this one, obviously, because of how many picks that Tyler Van Dyke was throwing. Tech benefited to the tune of 11 points of turnover luck. So that was a very important part of the game. And like turnovers are random, right? Especially picks. Like there's a lot of things that happen when the ball goes in the air. And what is the old saying? Like 3 of them are bad, something like that.
Something like that.
So again, like Tech caught a lot of breaks in this game just based on the numbers, but obviously it comes down to being able to finish in a moment where an opposing coach has effectively handed you a game on a silver platter and asked you to go take it from them. So
he handed them a chance. He didn't hand them the game. They still had to drive 74 yards for the win. He got that.
They just needed the field goal at that point, just at least tie it, like at least to extend it. They didn't need much. Aiden Burr's got range.
Yeah, I mean it's just like there's game management gaffes, and then there's that is the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah,
like that is obnoxiously bad. I think that's about everything on this one. Gentlemen, do you have anything else before we move on to our next couple of topics? Because I think we spent like 30 minutes on this alone.
I mean, deservedly so. This is going to be one of the most memorable. Odds are this is going to be the most memorable moment of the season, just because of how insane this was on both sidelines of how utterly ridiculous Mario Cristobal's decision was, and then Tech's ability to come up with and take complete advantage of it, and not do something. My tweet about finally someone else pulling in Atlanta did well, because it was finally somebody else that was doing the stupid and the what the hell is this, and not us. And I use us very generally across multiple sports there. But hey, yeah,
we'll get there.
We're calling it the Miracle in Miami Gardens. What do you want to call it? Do we want to settle on that episode title?
Sure, go with it. Be the change you want to see, Jack.
Sweet. Tech football is off this week. That's their bye week. I think they're in action next week versus someone. Fill in the gaps before I have to look it up.
The gap is going to be Boston College at Bobby Dodd Stadium. This is a 12 p.m. kick on the 21st of October.
Surprised that didn't get a 6-day hold, but I guess I don't know. Sometimes the ACC decides this stuff early. Moving on, just a couple of odds and ends before we go into a short break. Cross country was also off this week. Their next invite is at A&M this coming Friday. So we'll have some coverage of that next week. Swim and dive was also on break. They have two meets coming up. One is in Athens on Wednesday, and then they'll be at Emory at the weekend. There are some kick times, swim times, kick times. I guess kick time still works for both of those. The one in Athens will be at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, and then the one in Emory or at Emory will be at 4 p.m. The latter probably won't be streamed. The other one, ACC network or SEC network, excuse me. So take a look out. Keep a lookout for that. We'll be back with some men's tennis updates and talking about volleyball after this short break.
Yes, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section103.com. Section 103 is Georgia Tech's finest apparel provider. They have all the gold shirts that you could want, and they also have some great classic-looking designs and some new stuff as well. As always, feel free to scroll to the bottom of the page and check out their design poll, something we haven't plugged in a while, as is a great feature of theirs. We do have the ability as purchasers of their goods to help decide maybe, or at least give our input as to what comes next. So be sure to check that out when you go check out section103.com and at section103 on Twitter.
Welcome back to Signs of the Southland for Monday, October 9th. Let's talk about men's tennis very quickly. They're hosting ITA regionals this week. That is Thursday through Sunday, so technically the weekend. All day on that 4-day period starting at 8 a.m. They'll have a bunch of individual singles and a bunch of doubles pairings to look out for. Anything to watch out for, Mr. Purdy?
My only guess is they're going to use all the courts, so if you feel like showing up, they'll be out there. A lot of teams here, so maybe, I don't know, if you're like me and kind of wants to watch some other teams that we might play, there's that. Beyond that, I mean, we got some new folks here on the roster, but we also have all the old guard from last year, too. So, I mean, I guess for us, it's going to be a quasi-litmus test of where our main line of Chopra and Martin and everybody else at McDaniel are sitting. Granted, it's just fall. The real stuff really happens in the spring. So I'm not terribly worried about how this goes and stuff like that. But regardless, we get to see some tennis here on campus while we have nothing else going on campus. Or we have volleyball on campus, which we'll get to. But yeah, I may show if you go to these things, you might find me there on Thursday or Friday. See if I can make it a walk over.
So, question: do we know if the lads made it back from Tunisia or not? I think that'd be the main thing I would want to.
Well, I hope they caught a flight.
Verify.
I feel like they would have.
It's been like 2 weeks. I assume they're back.
Today was also fall break day on campus. This was the Monday off, so
maybe they're at GTL.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, I assume everyone's gonna play at this regional thing because why not?
Yeah, why not? Indeed.
Women's tennis was off this past week. Softball on that note was like playing practice innings versus Emory and Columbus State. I think the Columbus State one was actually at Columbus State.
It was, yeah.
Not a lot of results online for either of those. I think they visit somewhere very incredibly strange this weekend as well. Yes, Emmanuel Lions, which could not tell you where that school is.
Could not tell you if that was an elementary, middle, high school, private school, something else.
Yeah,
probably a college.
I don't know.
A group of friends hanging out playing softball together.
Yes.
Yes, the 1916 Cumberland team. I remember it well. Cumberland football team.
Yeah.
Last note, the Ben Hogan Collegiate for golf was this past week. They finished, I think it was 6th as a team. 6th, 11th, question mark?
25th.
No,
No, sorry, that was Hiroshi. Sorry. We should have done this beforehand. Sorry. We finished 8th, 9 over. a team out East beat us by 2 strokes. Vanderbilt ended up winning the thing. North Carolina got second. There's a lot of heavy hitters at this. We were ahead of
Yes, this is on me
Pepperdine.
for not putting the scores in the sheet. But yes, go through the rest of the scores for me, please.
Yeah, Arizona State third, Oregon, a bunch of teams up there. In a very familiar story, Crystal Lamprecht shot 66 on the final round to finish the 54 hole, tied for first place, and then lost a playoff. So he finished second. And then
Yay.
yeah, the rest of the guys, Bartley, Hitwell, what was it? Yeah, Hershey tied for 25th. Forrester was 43rd. Aiden Tran was 63rd, and the new guy Carson Kim was 73rd. So it was mostly yeah. So a little bit of guys like great at the top and guys not great at the bottom. So hence why we finished eighth and basically middle of the pack.
Good stuff. Golf will be back in action in 2 weeks. They'll be back at their home course in Alpharetta at the Golf Club of Georgia Collegiate Invitational on what is that? Homecoming weekend,
Yeah.
isn't it? Or is it
Is it the 28th?
No, that's
28th,
3 weeks. 2 weeks, not 3 weeks. 2 weeks. So the weekend before homecoming. Let's talk about volleyball. In a word, in my opinion, it was very frustrating weekend. Before we get into the details, let me lay out the results. Friday, Tech went up to Pittsburgh. They played number 7 Pitt. They led 2-0. Who had, as much as I don't believe in momentum personally, they had all of the momentum heading into set 3. They had 2 really rough sets, and then just a mess of a 5th set to lose in a 3-2 reverse sweep. And then on Sunday, they went down to Charlottesville, had played an incredibly rough first set, won 2 more sets, dropped, what would that be? 1 more set to UVA, and then won it in 5 in a very, very close game versus how do you say, not so great in aggregate volleyball team.
Incredibly overperforming volleyball team in Virginia.
Yeah, and I think the stats bear that out. I think when we pulled up UVA's Husker Geek profile during this game yesterday, it was like second or third to last in the ACC.
Yeah.
And that is saying something because the bottom of the ACC in volleyball is very bad.
Is bad.
So
it's bad.
Yeah.
I think the bottom of the ACC in volleyball is kind of like what we used to say about playing Clemson in women's basketball when a few years ago, where playing them is just as bad for your RPI. Playing them and winning was just as bad for your RPI as like losing to another team.
This is why coach asks for the hard schedule, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is fair. To be fair, it's entirely fair. So let's start with that game versus Pitt. Mr. Purdy, give me some of the details here. What went wrong for Tech in this one?
So we have been without Liv Mogridge, our starting middle blocker, since at this point Friday ago when we played at Virginia Tech. I want to say, she led, for those that missed this details, late in that match she was going for a block, and as she came down she landed on Larissa Mendez's foot. Her right foot landed on Mendez's left, and that did not end well for her. She had to get, like, she was limping off the court, had to get people to help her off. The team, I've asked the team if they really confirmed it, but they know she's injured, but they're not telling me what it is. But it was pretty clear it was an ankle or a knee thing, just seeing how the replay multiple times of how she landed. And she has not played since, and she's our primary guard. I mean, put in basketball terms, up there at the net. Because Mendez is not in there all the time. Mogridge is in there all the time, but she is sweeping the net. And so Anna Bosie has been starting in her place. DeAndre Pierce has gotten added points as well. And I think what happened here was, at least in the Pitt situation, is we were offensively on fire the first 2 sets. Like, in the first set, neither team was missing TLs. I think we had 19 kills in that first set. Like, it was, everyone was hitting. Otane was on fire. We looked about as good as we have all season against the best team we've played all season by far. And then Pitt I want to say they at the same time they turned on the Jets. I have a friend who writes about them. It was like when they turn it on about as good as anybody. And I believe her because holy crap, did they turn it on and we turned it off as hard as we could as well. Like those third and fourth sets were not competitive in the slightest. They were the most uncompetitive sets we have played all year by far. And we are good enough. And if we're good enough to put Pitt on the brink in 2 sets, came from behind. I'll note we lost the race to 20 in those first 2 sets. We were down multiple points when they got to 20, and we came back and won those 2 sets with late bursts, which is not a thing we usually do. That is a very not Georgia Tech thing for us to do, is to come from behind near the end of a set and win a set against a good team.
It's not like Tech dominated those first 2 sets, but they certainly looked decidedly worse in the third and fourth.
Right. Yeah, I would say dominate because Pitt looked great too, but like we played up to par and got the right end of the stick there, which momentum wise is huge in volleyball if you can pull that off. And then they just didn't, man. Olivia Babcock is their best player. She's a freshman. If that girl doesn't win offensive player, rookie of the year for the ACC, something's wrong because she is insane. She is absolutely insane. She does everything. Her serve is better than Bertolino's. She gets up in the air higher than anybody I've seen us play by far on attacks. And then she's super quick, and so she can get around to the digs or blocks or whatever. Like, she's insane. I don't want to point to any one thing as to why we went back because the whole team shut down. Ultimately, at the end of that, the 5th set, I watched it, but it was obvious what's going to happen by the end.
I just feel like we've seen this game before, you know?
Right. Like after 2 sets, it's like, oh my goodness. Like, okay, is this finally like we beat them in what? We beat them with Bergman and
21
in 21. We've beaten them in 21. And I would say that's within this era of like high level Georgia Tech volleyball, the highest level Georgia Tech volleyball has consistently seen.
Certainly.
So we've done this before, but I really want us to do it again to make that game not feel like the one-off.
My point in mentioning it feels like we played this game before is in 2019, again in their building, Tech took Pitt to 5 sets. They lost 15-13. They kind of traded sets back and forth more or less the first 4. But, that felt different, right? That was a Tech team overperforming. Oh, is this the big breakthrough win? Since they've been, roughly equivalent, Tech's really only broken through the one time. Pitt had our number at McCamish. They had our number at not Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, Peterson Event Center, because they played it in their basketball stadium, the return leg last year. I don't know. Like I was thinking of the Louisville home O'Keefe match last year too, of like going up 2-0 and then the reverse sweep there. It just feels like it's tough, right? These are great teams. That's why Tech plays them. But when you have an NC State that's already notched a Louisville win and Tech gets to play Pitt and Louisville combined 4 times, I feel like it's a little bit. I don't know. It kind of makes it an uphill battle if you want to be winning the conference title or something like that. Maybe that's me putting the cart before the horse, but
maybe. Of note in this Pitt game, this was the first game that Eloise Suarez started at center. Bella D'Amico has been fully benched and fully put in the second string, which she still gets points. Collier throws in a 6-2. She starts with a 5-1 rotation and puts in a 6-2 in the middle of the sets usually, and so that was Suarez's role. Now that's D'Amico's role to come in middle of the set and do that when she decides to go with it. So I don't think there's really massive adjustment to be made there because Suarez was doing better in the games beforehand setting anyway. So that's just more of the same for me. We have a proponent. This is what I noticed, and it got better in the Virginia game. We play better when our attacks are evenly distributed between Mendez, Otene, and Bertolino.
Yeah.
In this game, it was not. It's been worse so far this season, but this game was notable. Granted, 5 sets, so there's going to be there's a better chance for there to be some more weightiness to other stuff. Otene had 50 attacks. Mendez had 31. Bertolino 26. Bertolino had 6. Bertolino hit 0.077 in this game. Otene had 23 kills. She was great. Hit 240. We've seen our best players do games like that. Mendez only had 8 kills. In the 4th set, we had 6 kills, 10 errors. It was our first negative set of the year. Like, you can't do that. Pitt had no errors in the 5th set and had 7 kills.
Yeah,
And our
that'll do
side
it.
outs decreasingly got worse and worse in those last 3 sets as well. We had 421 in the first set against Pitt, which is nuts. That's absolutely insane. And yeah, it just went away. It just completely went away. They made the adjustment and got us out of system really badly. Pitt was not in system as much in those first 2 sets, and we took advantage of it. They hit only 188 in that second set. So we found ways to get around them, and then we had no other ways to get around them once Pitt found a solve.
I think for me, like this is one of the most frustrating losses of the year. I get that, even being up 2-0 is a little bit of was a little bit of luck, like especially with the margins that tight when you're winning sets 25-23, and only the game only separates in those last couple of points. Like,
Yeah.
there's definitely a little bit of luck involved, both on the blocks and on serve occasionally. But those last two, or those middle 2 sets, like I think Tech played pretty well in set 5, at least trying to salvage
They
a
did.
result.
The effort felt better. Like if it, totally, the mood felt better. But
But
still hit
the
5 errors.
middle two are like, I mean, Pitt put them in a blender, right? Like Pitt made them look like
Yeah.
Pitt made them look like it was just like a completely different level. Like they were a completely like much lower tier of the ACC,
Right.
than they are, than we know they are, and I think that's incredibly frustrating because there wasn't like Pitt adjusted, but there wasn't necessarily a counter adjustment, and I really wish I think this is where I really wish I had some more knowledge about how volleyball works and some of the inner workings to really identify what that adjustment was and what other things could have been done to counter it, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's something that Jack, you said you'll have an interview with Michelle Collier later this week. Like
Yep.
that's definitely something to key in on and say like, hey, like what are the weaknesses here and how do we continue to account for those against that elite of a team, right? Um, I and it sort of feeds into that next game, that Sunday game versus UVA, where they just had trouble out of the gate in that first set. Before we get to that, Jake, I noticed that you've been trying to make a point as I've been talking this whole time.
As is tradition with volleyball, you two both have opinions, and it makes it very challenging for me to get a word in edgewise. That used to be my job. What happened? Anyways,
future is now, old man.
Dan Fisher is a phenomenal in-game adjustments coach. Absolutely phenomenal. Every game we play against Pitt, there's some sort of, adjustment, tweak thing that he can do that dials up his offense and his defense and whatever other rotations, positioning, whatnot, to get them in the right way to play. And you know what? Great for them. They've been a Final Four team for a reason, right? But at the end of the day, it just seems like, and maybe this was true in the UGA game too, but it just seems like the adjustments are stacking up. And I do want to give Coach Fisher his flowers because he's got tremendous program. And he always seems to have the right answer, but it's very frustrating that he always has the right answer, right? Because more so than Louisville, I feel like, we have a lot of data points on Pitt and Louisville both, but there's a lot more examples of Tech really pushing Pitt to the limit. And it's a couple little things. Yes, they're very talented, but that blocking changes just a little bit. They're feeding just a little bit different of an angle. That I don't know. I think there's been enough consistency over the last, almost 6-7 years now since they started, their three-peat. I think 2017 was the first one. So 6-7 years where it's like, hey, Coach Fisher's got a pretty long track record of showing that they're taking advantage of that. And I think it's in a different way than Louisville is really the point I wanted to get around to there.
Yeah, Louisville is just sort of like smothering in terms of its like effectiveness in those games, whereas Pitt is more it's like hammer versus scalpel, if that analogy makes sense. Like Pitt is very specific in how they seem to adjust, whereas Louisville just sort of throws numbers and power at you and overwhelms you.
Yeah.
That's at least my read on it. And actually, that
Seems
opens
decently
up
fair.
a point that
Seems
I want to
decently fair.
make. Yeah, and that opens up a point that I want to make because I think the way that Tech set themselves up in those first two sets was they were able to really put some put some pace on the ball in those
Yeah.
first two sets, like in a way that I have not seen them do this season. That to that extent, like I think one of the things that we talked about coming out of that Georgia game to start the year was they consistently went off speed even when it was disadvantageous. And in those first two sets, they were finding avenues for both to get good sets and then to get good ball placement when they had opportunities to just really put the hammer down, right? And that is probably the adjustment, right? Make sure that by Pitt, right? Make sure that Tech can't get perfect sets off or even good sets off, so that they can't set up for that kind of power.
Right.
And it's subtle, right? Like I said, I mean, we're also not experts, so it's hard for us to identify it, but it's just switched
Yeah.
immediately, and it's something small that they changed, and they had much less. At least from my eye, like Pitt had a lot less open space in the middle of the court. The Tech was forced to try to work the angles a lot more, and that's just kind of the way that the game went for the rest of the match. So, um, pretty frustrating result there. Let's turn the page. Let's talk about this UVA game while we have a couple minutes here. This one was frustrating in a completely different way. Given
Yeah.
what we said about UVA to lead this segment, like UVA, full credit to them for coming out and like really playing well in this game. Like I don't want that to be lost, but like historically, this is not a very good volleyball team.
We have not
And I
lost them
think
since
the money
2017.
the money line from the broadcast is that 8-7 is UVA's best start to a season in program history. I think that's what you're saying, Jack.
Something like
Like
that. Yeah. It was
that
something.
is
Yeah.
that is
So
not
weird.
a particular
So weird.
that
Yeah.
that says a lot. Like that statement says a lot.
Yeah.
So
Not a lot of good
walk me.
things.
Not no, not at all. So let's talk about this real quick, Jack. What did you see in that first set that was that just had to be overcome in order to salvage this result?
I mean, we looked amazing in that first set. Like we had 406, we had 17 kills, only 4 errors. We looked exactly how you would think we would look against Virginia. Like that was like, oh, great. This is exactly what we was hoping for. Game will be over in an hour and a half. I can watch the end of the Falcons game. Uh, then the second set happened where we didn't necessarily look terrible either. Like we still hit 250, but UVA just came out swinging and they made life difficult, like really difficult for us, and found some runs that I don't think we necessarily saw coming, so to say. We were working Anna Bozy at the front. We were trying a bunch of other stuff to try and get around them, and they just had the right run at the right time and won the race to 25. Would we have won the race to 30? Maybe. But it ain't a race to 30, it's a race to 25. So they just played up to us and did well. And I think for me, maybe one dating back to the Pitt game is to go back to the Liv Mogridge thing. Like that's a massive presence at the net we don't have, and it seemed like UVA kind of adjusted well to that. And then we didn't really have a real counter for that between Anna Bozy and Smiley Maniac's not. I don't think, but Kelly wants to use her in that way necessarily as like the default person in the middle because she's a really good attacker. And then DeAndre Pierce just isn't tall enough. Simply, like she's good at which she's skilled, but she's not. We need a very large body there, and it just became clear we needed somebody to be a guard and play goalie up there. And so enter Callie Engelman for the first time since 2021, who was out last year with an ACL or something with her knee. Had played 2 sets total in the UCLA game in 2021. Didn't play last year. Hadn't played at all this year, and then completely changed the dynamic at the net for us over the next three sets. Had her first kills of her career, her first blocks of her career, her first everything's, and it was really. And she has more power than Bozy and Pierce as well. She's taller and has it all, and she just played better. And granted, we lost one of those sets, but we won 2 sets that she played. and was a primary middle blocker. And I think it made a notable difference. I'm really excited to ask Collier about what finally clicked in her head to be like, okay, this has to change. We have to go to our, I guess technically, I mean, she's the fifth middle blocker we've used this year in any consistent way. So and it ended up really well. Granted, it's Virginia. Maybe you discount the fact that you're still playing Virginia, even in a good game, are not as great. Our deeper bench still looks great against them, but she made a difference, and it was not nothing. So my hope is that she plays more because she seemed good. She seemed good. She had no attacking errors. She had 625 in 8 attempts. Like, it was real. So
the thing with this game is that they saw, like, Collier saw an adjustment to be made and made it. So it's interesting to juxtapose the Pitt game where there was an adjustment made by Pitt and there was not necessarily an effective counter versus this one. I also think that Collier heard my comments slandering her earlier in the season for not using her bench and is now just going out of her way to throw all of her bench players a bone and to play a really, really deep rotation now. So I'm personally taking credit for that. I don't know about y'all, but me personally, I'm taking credit for that. Mr. Grant, actually, it's Jack. It's Mr. Purdy. You have some sort of rant.
Oh, yes.
To do, according to our shot sheet.
All right. So a lot of why I think we lost the second set was not Tech's fault. Not necessarily Virginia's fault either. Virginia played up. It's because there was three very critical calls made that were incredibly incorrect. For those that have watched volleyball, there's a lot of VAR that happens here. And I'm a huge proponent of VAR. I think it's a great thing. I think they should do it all the time. But at the same time, there's a lot of attacks that happen that will hit the fingertips of the blockers jumping up and then fly out of bounds. And sometimes it's closer than a bang play in baseball. Like
is it clear and obvious, Jack?
It is never clear and obvious. It is never clear and obvious when they review it. If the fingers they need for a call that they need 8K like those super slow-mo cameras for, they don't have them.
It's literally like the Hawkeye is like rocket tracking cameras. Like it's either Hawkeye or TrackMan, but they were literally
these exist
tracking rockets.
They have this technology out there, but they don't use it in volleyball because schools are not paying. I mean, it's a very expensive thing to pay for and implement in your building.
It's a very
So, like, I'm not blaming Tech for not having this or Virginia for not having this technology in their building. But at the same time, there were some painfully obvious tip balls that Tech got called the wrong way for. Like, Virginia got 3 points that way, including, I think, the set winner. It was just all wrong. I'd also just like to note the fact that and I'm trying to be really nice here, most of these volleyball referees are not exactly young people. And generally, I don't think have Kevin Youkilis vision at 2010 or whatever, something like that. So I don't fault them for missing it because there's human error involved in all this with judging and refereeing. But there were some reviews that were clear that they got wrong after they reviewed it, that they had got it wrong. And so I don't know what the standards are here. I know these are all local crews and stuff like that. They're doing their best, but we can do better here. We can do a lot better here. And this is coming from somebody who has been trained in the ways of replay review in other sports. I know we could do better here.
Jack, what you have to understand is even at the top line of sport, professional officials make mistakes and they cuss on terrestrial television, international television, mind you.
I know.
Over
exactly
it. It's very funny. Also, just to cite, I want to get the number about the Hawkeye system in because it's funny.
Got a plan. Vertical laser, horizontal laser just above the floor, barely above the floor. Vertical lasers right on the edge of the court. If any part of the ball breaks the plane, we got to filter out people. That's, no big deal there. Lasers. That's my solution.
Lasers for the ins and out of bounds would work, but then you got to have something about when it touches. Now, if we have perfect VAR
light up
in
fingers,
this,
gloves. Make everyone wear gloves with lights.
We're gonna have some tip calls that like just barely graze, but are gonna call it because offside technology.
What is it? Is this gonna be fencing? Like they have to the buzzes as soon as they hit
We're gonna
touch
put a
something.
we're
Is
gonna
that
put
what
a
it's going to be?
nanoparticle suit over everybody before
Yeah.
every game.
Also, important question: are we talking like like normal like barcode scanner lasers? Or are we talking like James Bond, Doctor No style lasers here? Because there's two different types of lasers that we're putting at stake for our athletes here.
Simply play death volleyball. Duh.
Now that's a really crappy Netflix movie that I would watch personally. They
Yeah.
made Death Race. Look, there's
Uh,
money in it. Anyway, speaking of money, I wanted to jump back to the Hawkeye system installation
yeah.
for tennis. This is for tennis, and this is from tennisguide.org, so I assume it's legit. The generally speaking, the or quote, generally speaking, the cost of the Hawkeye system for a professional tournament will range from $60,000 to $100,000. End quote. That is more than I expected it to be.
It's a lot.
Um,
There's a reason other notable leagues that me and Akshay follow don't purchase all of the equipment necessary for their league because yeah, the costs are insane.
I so I do think I mean like officiating in the sport is a problem. Like I agree with you. Like I think a lot of these calls get far too close. Like it's like a solvable problem. Like
Yeah.
because there's not that many hands at the net there for like the software to have issues with it. You can install
The
those cameras
screen
pretty appropriate.
resolution and frame rates exists to solve these problems. The cameras are going to be expensive, but we can get to the frame rate. Slow-mo guys
I mean,
exist.
but it's like you install it once, right? You install
Right.
it once, you update the software every couple of years, and you're fine. I think one of the things too is like standardization of these systems. Like you're talking about, okay, let's max it out. It's $100,000 on your budget for in year zero of installation.
Wow.
Um,
It's not good.
and you're installing that. I mean, you can install that in a gym like text. I mean, it'll be difficult just to get the wiring down
Yeah.
and it put into a replay room, like replay review room, or similar. But just because of the age of the building, but it's totally feasible to spend $100,000 and do that installation, and especially because you need what like two cameras at the net, two high speed cameras at the net, and then one along like two at each baseline. I don't really think that I feel like this is a no brainer, and the technology like definitely exists. Like
Yeah.
soccer has semi automated offside like machine learning line drawing. Like
Yeah.
it's not that difficult
And you just need
anymore. It all
you
comes
just need
down
the
to
most
money.
basic version of this, which is just a high speed camera that can feed quickly to another monitor where
A
you
high
can.
speed, high resolution camera, mind you, because I
Yes, true.
think
Yeah,
they're
high
using
resolution. Yeah.
broadcast cameras for these, and they're using broadcast cameras and then one camera that's constantly on the net.
Yeah,
If I
they
understand
have
it
some
correctly,
fixed. Yeah, they have some fixed on there. So those are the ones that
and
are
I
just not.
just
They're not good enough resolution. You can't with a ball that's flying however many miles an hour off someone's hands, and then less than a foot later, you need to see if it came off an index finger and barely moved it. I mean, you're measuring something that happened in tenths of a second. So
are you
it's really
telling
hard
me
to
that zoom and enhance isn't like when I tell that ensign to zoom and enhance, they can't actually make the footage look better?
They had this in the first like Mission Impossible movies in the 90s. They had it way back
No,
when they
well,
had
the
this
zoom and
in.
enhance thing is fake. You still need the
If they
megapixels.
had it in a
So
movie, it must be real.
Absolutely.
that's
That's how
right.
it worked,
Yes, for sure. We've already referenced so
That's
many good
exactly.
spy movies in this segment. I'll note just for overall stuff, we're still 14th in Husker Geeks Viper rankings, which is great. We remained 11th in today's AVCA ranking, so like the most official ranking there is right now. Points wise, in terms of voting points, we got it was about the same as last week. So taking Pitt to 5 and going to 5 against UVA seemed to balance out. I guess no one seemed to really worry about that. Granted, that was our fourth, fifth straight game on the road, so I'm sure we were sick of being on the road and just barely muscling those out. I'll note fifth set against UVA, we won 15-13. Like Larissa Mendez had to record 4 points in the last 5 like active played points to pull that off. So we were down 10-8 in that set and came back again. So big
I
ups
clicked
to
it off and went to the pinball museum. I was like, yeah, no,
Pinball
I
Museum's
gotta.
great. Pinball
It
Museum
was.
is great.
I need to take a timeout.
Uh, so that was really good stuff by Larissa Mendez there. We're 13th in Evolve, which is another place we like, and we're third in the ACC right now. We play Florida State next, who is first. Granted, they haven't played like the weapons we've played so far. I will also note that the UVA game, Tamara Otene became Tech's fifth ever player to have a 20-20 double. So that is a 20 kill, 20 dig double. That was the most digs she's had in her career. It was not the most of the day. Pimentel had 22, and someone else from Virginia's team had 22 as well. So that's now 3 straight games we played 5 sets at Wake Forest, at Pitt, and at Virginia, hosting Florida State. Lord, I hope we don't have to go to 5 again, because that's going to eventually that was a big thing from last year, is we just didn't play 5 setters much at all. And we weren't able to come around when we did. So maybe we are more prepared for the next time we get there. Now we played 3 of these in a row. I don't know. But hosting FSU and Miami, I mean, they're both not bad teams. They were both close to ranked or ranked at some point during the season. So these are teams that can challenge us and should challenge us, I think, if they're going to play at their normal level. But there's no breaks here in this. There's no breaks in this calendar, pretty much. Like, this was kind of like this Wake Forest, Pitt, Virginia break. Like, the ends of this should have been like the break games, and they just weren't. Granted, bad luck with injuries, so that's just going to happen. So, yeah, listen, I think I'm going to have it up by end of day Wednesday, my interview with Michelle Collier, where hopefully a lot of these questions that me and Akshay and Jake have about just like, all right, what's clicking in terms of what's instigating you to make these changes? Where is Mogridge at? How are you adapting in game? They're still 14-2. Like, they're still great. This is, for all this we're saying, this is still a really good volleyball team that is using the depth in ways they haven't before to win matches in recent memory. So,
Jack, let the rage fuel you. Come on.
Well, I mean, good things just happen in Truist Park, so the rage is gone. Yeah.
Just wait. It's never easy. It's never easy with them.
You're getting me live doing
You have the best offense in the last 95 years in baseball.
13 straight
things are never easy.
Never easy.
13 straight scoreless innings will make a man stressed in the playoffs, but, I hear what you're saying. All right, that's all I got on the volleyball. Please show up on Friday or Sunday if you can.
I'll be there.
I think that's about all I have for today. I think that's about all we have for today. We've gone way long and gotten lost in the weeds, and I hope a bunch of this is edited out. But, Mr. Grant, I'm told you have some news, other news to share as well.
So, trivia this week. Boston College leads Georgia Tech. Actually, Georgia Tech leads Boston College, if you want to be really a stickler about this. In one key category, this is the amount of times that Georgia Tech has logged a conference win over this program. Can you tell me, in which sport is Georgia Tech undefeated against Boston College, and how many straight times have they won this matchup? All these filtered to conference play only. For consistency.
Gonna go with, oh shoot, what was their conference? What was Boston College conference championship in?
Men's soccer, so that's not going to help you out here.
Oh, great. All right, I'm going women's
and they
tennis.
won field hockey too.
I'm going women's. I was just making sure it wasn't tennis, because my pick is tennis.
It was women's lacrosse.
Women's lacrosse. But yeah, their conference championships are not relevant here. No. Akshay, do you have a guess? That's a good guess, though, Jack. That is a good guess.
For a second, I thought you were talking about me, not shaking my head. No, I don't have a guess. As saying that's a good guess. You're not going to get this.
You don't have a guess? It is so.
No.
Boston College, and I developed a little rank on this. So I found 2 different ways to rank it. I didn't like one way. It was kind of a weighted average of wins and record and blah, blah, blah. All that saying Tech having a losing record all time against Clemson got a nice boost because they played so many freaking times in baseball. Clemson baseball, that is. So I threw that out and just did a straight up rank by win percentage with the wins against the team as a tiebreaker. And in that case, while Tech is 18 for 19 against Boston College women's tennis, they are a perfect 17-0 against Boston College men's tennis. Tech is also undefeated all time in conference play against Pittsburgh and Louisville and Notre Dame in women's tennis. No longer undefeated against Louisville in football. They are now 2 for 3. I say all this because I was like, dang, really feels like we should beat, Virginia in volleyball when we play them. And I found out by this ranking, that's actually only the 23rd most Tech lopsided matchup if you will. There's a fair few scattered in there. But, it's just interesting to think about, Jack, I don't know if you know this trope as much, but something we've kind of unboxed in the past is, Georgia Tech always kind of pencils in the Duke football game as a win, right? No matter what happens, it's that Duke football game's a win. They actually rank above, Virginia in this little metric, but up there you've also got quite a few men's and women's tennises up there with a couple volleyball schools as well. So I just thought it was interesting, just in terms of how we frame it for ourselves. But yes, Georgia Tech is a perfect 17-0 against men's tennis from Boston College. And I'm sure now that I've said that, I will have horribly jinxed us for this coming year. But, that's how this goes.
I'm going to clip this and come back to it in like March or April. And we're just going to insert it right there, right before we talk about Boston College beating Tech in tennis.
All right. With that trivia hence concluded, I have one more thing before we go. No more Brock Bowers radio ads, Georgia Tech. Anyways, in the meantime, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. You can email us fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. We really do appreciate the feedback and commentary. You've got no more Brock Bowers radio ads. You can find us on Twitter at From the Rumble Seat FTRS blog on Twitter. I'm at Jake Grant 98. Jack is at Jack Nicholas. You can find Section 103 on Twitter as well at Section 103, section103.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. You can find these podcasts wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Please tell your friends. We do appreciate it. And word of mouth is oh so powerful for us. In the meantime, till we speak next week, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.